This podcast is brought to you by Scratchpad.
So I learned a lot about, what they actually do and why people that work in sales, they kind of they're very proud of it too. They're proud of the tough job that they have, and they're proud when they make a sale, and for good reason, because it's like anything else that we do. It's just like endless learning by doing, lots of practice, repetition, until you get so good that you could sell anyone anything.
So you're ready to go into sales if this show doesn't take off. That's what you're saying.
I thought that was the job opportunity to begin with, man. I mean, I was desperate. So
I'll be honest, I still don't fully believe you, but hey, we'll take your word for it.
That's some royalty-free shit, people. That's what we do.
Beyond Quota.
We are joined by Stephen Ohl, aka Steve, the director of the soon-to-be critically acclaimed S.A.D. Sales Are Dope. And of course, we've got Talon Gonzalez as well, our second AD and producer. Am I forgetting something? No, first AD, third AD, ninth AD, 11th AD. Which AD are you? Which number? Yeah, producer, but aren't you like...
First of additional photography, or second unit, I don't know.
He's the second first AD.
Second first AD, and honestly creative director, and like was a part of this project before anyone else besides Ben. So Talon has been through it. Talon even suffered through the Unsubscribe show. He suffered through many cold call reenactments. And Steven's actually suffered through some cold call reenactments. And of course, we've got Pouyan. Can you say Grandmaster?
I've been called many other things that are worse than that, but Grandmaster, I will take.
Grandmaster Pouyan.
I'm excited for this show, and Steve, Talon, thanks so much for joining. I'm just impressed you all signed up to work with Ross again after Unsubscribe. Let's jump right in, and I've got a bunch of questions for you all, but I'm curious, how does it feel right now?
Talon, you go first, because so Talon brought me onto the project as well. That's another masterful use of his talents that he brought me. So, but Talon's been on a long time. So Talon, how does it feel for you?
Yeah, I mean, it feels it's big in a way, a relief. I think this has been top of mind for, over, I don't know, I could even say 3 years. That's how long I've known Ross, and he's been talking about it. It wasn't a fully fleshed out, like it's going to happen, until maybe like a little over a year ago. So since then until now, it's just been kind of like that, pushing a rock up a hill. And finally, we're just about to get it up there. So yeah, it feels great. Big accomplishment. I'm super happy with our final product. Very excited to have people see it finally.
Well, Talon, why don't we have you share the story of, from your perspective, how this came to be?
It was around the time when Ross and Ben had been working on a script. They obviously had the pilot from before. I think that was like the 2020 pilot. And they were reworking a lot of the script to kind of go from, I don't know if you guys had like a couple episodes done and you wanted to like turn that into a full season. But that was around the time that I knew they needed a little help with like some structure and a little bit more of like a fine-tuned eye as to like converting it from the ideas they had in their head to what would be successful on a show, like a multi-episodic show. And that's when I thought of Stephen, who I'd worked with quite a few times before. He's a graduate from American Film Institute. I worked on a lot of projects with him. I worked on a feature film that he did a couple of years. I think that was like 2019. So I knew he kind of had the writing chops and the experience from taking a project from the page to the screen. And I thought that would be just a great asset to Ross and Ben's already great talent of like understanding sales and great joke writing. I wanted to have somebody that had that experience and kind of could pull it all together. So that's when, I think I was at a bar with Stephen, and I was like, hey, I'm working with these guys. You should check out this script draft they had. And then I came over to Ross and Ben. I was like, hey, I think this guy could have a great eye. Check it out. And I think it went from sharing the script to then having him kind of join on as like an additional writer. And that kind of that kept going, and it kind of fleshed out into the full season. And then, yeah, I think you can take it from there, Ross, as far as where.
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
that
I
went.
mean, Ben and I were trying to write 22-minute network television like level episodes, which like it's one thing to just put enough words on a piece of paper for that to be 22 minutes. And it's another to make it like actually the formula needed to be a compelling piece of television. And we just weren't like good enough. And also I think part of it was we knew that even if we were to write 8 episodes, there's no way we'd get to make 8 episodes 22 minutes long. The budget it would take, like the time it would take. So we basically decided, okay, let's take 3 episodes, break them up, either do somewhere between 6 to 10 episodes. We'll chunk them into thirds and then fill in some blanks, add some meat to it just so they feel a little bit more like full stories versus just like chopping at random points. And so having Stephen come on, and we had a few other writers kind of pass through the writer's room for periods of time. Folks, Alexis Gay was working on it with us for a couple months. Then she moved to New York. And so kind of she was overloaded, kind of had to bow out. We had another guy named Will Ewing, who is a writer on Riverdale, and he had AMC pick up one of his pilots. And so he was busy and kind of had to move on there. But like, then Stephen was the last nail that we kind of needed to bring in someone who A, kind of shared our humor, and B, like could watch this and read this show as someone who had no experience with it. Like Ben and I were so deep and so caught up in the details that this guy could read it for the first time and give us a genuine first opinion and be like, do you understand? This is a guy who had no sales or tech experience. Like he's been a Hollywood guy through and through, and a director through and through. So it was just like, that's what we needed to kind of get it to a point where the story made sense for people that weren't just people sitting on the sales floor.
I'm so curious, Talon, what was your experience with sales before, and what is it? Or not experience. So the experience was 0. What was your perception of sales before, and what is it now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it really would be before and after I joined Bravado. So I'm the creative director at Bravado, and I've been there just about 5.5 years. So before that, I didn't know much about tech sales, and my only experience with sales was working at a startup that I went door to door to different businesses, trying to have them create a student discount. So I kind of had that like very minimal canvassing experience, I guess you'd say. But then taking it to like the next level of like tech sales, where you have 6-figure deals and huge things at stake, and definitely a different lifestyle as far as like with all the tech components involved. So my impression before was I don't know what tech sales people did. Hearing about Bravado and what they did, I was like, all right, there's got to be important if we're creating a company around these folks. So I guess it was kind of just ignorance. Didn't know how they would be different than other tech people that I had encountered, but quickly found out that it is kind of its own subculture, very different. I'd say the thing I learned the most from working at Bravado is you absolutely cannot bullshit salespeople. They will just see right through that. They'll sniff it out immediately. I think you can't. I mean, not that I was trying to bullshit anybody, but I think it's just clear. They'll see it coming from a mile away if you try to like smooth something over with some fancy language. Like, no, they're right to the point. They know what you're trying to do. And I think that then comes through with the content. You don't pull any punches. You gotta just be real. The more you can level with them in like the reality of what tech sales is, the more it's going to resonate. So I think that lesson has carried through, especially to the show, where we're depicting a early stage startup tech sales team and all of the things that go along with that. And I want to just do justice to what is fairly different than what the other experiences in tech can be.
Steve, I asked Talon what his perception of sales was before doing the show and what it is now. Your turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry about the internet. I moved to a ranch in Texas, and Elon Musk hasn't gotten his gear here yet, so waiting for it. But salespeople before, I mean, damn, I thought they were like, coffee chugging, Adderall, snorting savages beforehand. And now I think exactly the same thing. No, I mean, no, I really didn't know much about the sales world. You know, I just thought that there were these people that, you know, made calls all day long, but I didn't know how much they were calling. I didn't know how many calls they were making a day. You know, I didn't know how kind of intense, difficult, and downright traumatic the work was to them at times, but it makes sense, you know. And so I learned a lot about, you know, what they actually do, and why people that work in sales, you know, they kind of they're very proud of it too. You know, they're proud of the tough job that they have, and they're proud when they make a sale, and for good reason, because it's, you know, it's like anything else that we do. It's just like, you know, endless learning by doing, lots of practice, repetition, until you get so good that you could sell anyone anything.
So you're ready to go into sales if this show doesn't take off. That's what you're saying. Like,
I thought that was the job opportunity to begin with, man. I mean, I was desperate. So,
I mean, if you're working with Ross, I wasn't gonna say anything.
Obviously, he's desperate. He's working with me.
No, seriously, how was it working with Ross? What was the worst part?
Working with him was awesome. You know, got a great sense of humor, and I could always rely on him to bring the funnies, which allowed me to, you know, focus on story, character, visuals. And we actually ended up making a good team. I think we did a little butt sniffing at first, you know, kind of a you know, toxic masculine dance to see who's going to trust who first, and then, you know, and do we really have what it takes to work with each other? And I think, like, you know, throughout the process, it became very smooth. It was always difficult to wake up in the morning and find everything rewritten, you know, but I adapted to that, and usually the rewriting was for improvements.
Yeah.
And you know, I could be a little bit neurotic sometimes, but what great artists can't, you know? So
It's true.
Overall, it was a good time. Yeah.
That was a lot more tame,
PG,
and nice than I was expecting you to share. But
we had our moments, but
yeah, we'll do the shit talking after the show, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, you hear these stories of film sets and just like how ridiculous they can be. And like, if anybody's listening has ever watched like The Bear on Hulu, and how everybody in the kitchen just screaming at each other, just saying so many ruthless, mean things. And then the next day everyone shows up for work like everything's fine. And like, that's just like the nature of it. I kind of had that impression of film sets where everyone's just like, fuck this and fuck that, and people are yelling at each other. I felt like we had a pretty damn cordial set of people who seemed to all be bought in and like having a really fun time. And, you know, we had our moments of frustration, and we had our like anything, some things take longer than others, and you want to get things right, and you know you've only got that day to kill that scene, and you don't get to go back. You know, we didn't have the money at the time and the you know, ability to, and you know, to fall back. So you're stressing a little bit of times to make sure you get everything you need so that it can be as good as it can. So, you know, I'm sure Stephen and I had many small disagreements and our discussions, but like at the end of the day, like, we brought Stephen here because he's good at what he does, and like does it and knows it a lot better than certainly me or Ben. You know, like, we couldn't do it unless Stephen was there. We have no idea what the hell we were doing. So Stephen had to drive.
And that's what made it a great collaboration. You know, it was like, they're the experts, you know, on the show and the writing and the world, and I could bring my expertise into filmmaking and trying to make this high quality show. But I really I can't do like what you're talking about, the shouting matches. Like, I can't do conflict. Like, I don't know how some people on set can like live in that environment, and some directors even relish that. But I'm like the path of least resistance, right? Like, it's like, if there is a conflict, I have to figure out a way to work it out as smooth and quickly as possible, because I can't operate if there's like bad energy at all. And then my energy trickles down to everybody else. And so if there is any negative energy, the whole set will be corrupted in like seconds, you know? So
yeah, if he's like, and action, you know, we need and action. We need that, you know? We
so
knew.
You're the hype man.
I'm the hype man.
Hype man on set.
A lot of things. Yeah, that's one of
a
them.
lot of things.
Ross, what was let's flip that. How was this experience relative to sales? Like being on set, making a film, making multiple episodes.
I think in terms of sales, most of the selling came up front on getting people bought into the project. It wasn't as much. I would actually liken it a lot more to probably what you do on a day to day with Scratchpad of like managing the project across all departments and like needing to just make sure that nothing gets forgotten or like you're in one of those modes where it's like, okay, like I said earlier, it's like you got one shot at this. If I'm like curious or worried or like thinking maybe we missed something, I have to say it. We don't get to go back and fix it if not. So like you're kind of just trying to stay on top of all the things that need to happen. And like, it's not a lack of trust of anyone else. It's just like I would regret if we missed something because I didn't say something. And so I would say things that people would be like, yeah, of course we got that. Duh. Like we're done. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I just want to make sure like we're there and we got that. It's much more of like, it's just a longer day than I think like what a typical sales day is. And you're just managing and thinking about so many different pieces, and then the writing at night, like that was so much of this. Like when you're a first timer, you can't see the set. You don't know what the set's actually going to look like. You don't know who the actors are going to be when you're writing it. And that's why like so many comedy shows are better in the second, third, fourth seasons is because you know what you're working with. And so we'd have inside jokes, we'd have improv moments, we'd have these periods where it's like, oh, now no longer this line no longer makes sense, or let's make a reference to this previous joke because this already happened, and like make it feel. It was really about kind of bringing out some of the chemistry that you started to see on the set, and so like to me it was just project management at like an extreme level.
What was the most difficult part of making this? I mean, you kind of alluded to it now. It's like lots of changes. You wake up in the morning, you're like, okay, this thing's been rewritten. You got to adjust quickly. But what was hard about it? Who was hard to work with on it? You don't have to go into names if you don't want to. But like, are there certain roles? Yeah.
Yeah, Talon could go first if he has like.
Yeah, I mean difficulties.
From over.
Yeah, I mean if something difficult with any big project is just scheduling things out and making sure you're good to start. I think that is always difficult. You got to make sure you have the right cast in place, and then everything fits in together on a schedule, and then you can finally say, all right, these are the days we're shooting. This is the order we're shooting in. This is how the scenes will play out. That's, I think, typical for any shoot. I'd say for me right now, a difficult thing is getting everything wrapped up like right now for the premiere or for the project, because there's so many people working on a project, and you have to check out every small little detail before you can finally say it's done. I think that is something that's so easy to mess up, and we're constantly finding things wrong and having to go back. And that, yeah, I think that is that's difficult because you always fear that something is missed, or you only have one shot to kind of have the final product, and you're going to miss something. So yeah, you got to kind of be a little bit of a perfectionist and go back and fix whatever has to be done. But yeah, as far as production stuff go, I think Stephen would be better to answer that as far as on the ground.
Yeah, I'll start with the writing process. I think the difficult thing for me, or when I came on, was to make it accessible to a general audience, and that was like bringing the voiceover in more. Anytime I didn't understand something, that was a great tool to bring me up to speed and the audience, and really leaning into that. Making sure that there was like a human story to it as well, and like something to connect with, because it's always been really funny. But I think when we did the rewrite together, me, Ross, and Ben, we really amped up the characters development, and we really made it a story arc. But that was difficult. And then pre-production, finding the right office location was really challenging, and then casting. And then the casting went into the production. The production itself was really hard, but it went really smooth. We had a great crew, and we ended up having a great cast. But I think the difficult part for me was, Ross has this thing in his head, and he was trusting me to direct it with my vision. But it was like the things that were difficult for me were like, this character has to be this way, has to look this way because of these reasons. And me making sure that Ross and Ben were very happy every step of the way with the characters. And getting those performances right was the most challenging for me. And then in the post-production, just having so many executives and so many producers to make sure that we're seeing everything and we're all on the same page and making sure that everyone's happy.
Beyond Quota.
This podcast is brought to you by Scratchpad. What if I told you you could reduce your sales cycle by 30% in 60 days? That's what happened when Crunchbase adopted Scratchpad. By driving process adoption, leaders and reps moved deals through the pipeline with speed. They trusted their CRM, and forecasts were easier to predict. Learn how your team can get radically efficient at scratchpad.com.
Beyond Quota.
The folks that I've talked to that have seen it are like, why did this not happen sooner? Like, this needed to exist. So fired up for it. What are you all hoping happens with this?
That's what I tell everyone. I tell everyone I have like extremely high hopes and extremely low expectations. I in the worst case scenario, this goes on YouTube and a lot of people really enjoy it. And like, it's something in a project that like, I'm just so proud to have gotten done and out in the world. My I'll say threshold for success is all I want to do is figure out how to do it again. Like, we have a mapped out second season. Like, I would love to figure out how we can triple the budget so we can go outside, how we can do more things. Like, there's so many funny things. Like, I've written a scene about Corp and Travis getting absolutely dominated by a Girl Scout. Like, I've got Corp and Raj trying to make a sale at a funeral. Like, to be able to do those things, you need budget. Right. And so all I want to do is prove that if we had more resources, we could do this again and even better. Like, that's what I want to do. I mean, wouldn't it be great to get 10 million views and then Netflix is like, hey, we want to buy this and bring it out like immediately? Of course. But I'm a little more realistic than that. We're watching television as we know it. Media change right now. Work has never been slower. Shows have never been picked up at a slower pace, and that's the cool part is like, we went out and did this on our own. And obviously, like, with the help of Scratchpad and Bravado, but like, we didn't need traditional Hollywood. We didn't have to go through the streamers. Like, we got it done. And so I don't care how we get it done again. I would like to do it again though. That's like what I would say.
Yeah, I'm super pumped. I'm very excited about it. I can't wait for it to just be out there, and I'm going to be reading people's comments and watching the ticker go up. And then hopefully, I wanted to take the time to pitch this around. I wanted to try to get it on Netflix or Hulu, but I agree with, the final conclusion to just get it out there into the world. I mean, that's the best thing, right? Is to complete something and actually have an audience to watch it, which is what, Corporate Bro and Corporate Natalie being on board have really provided us. So I'm pumped. I hope we get a season 2, and I hope it happens soon. Like, I'm ready to go.
Ross, what are you thinking for the world of sales, or for salespeople watching this? What do you want that impact to be?
I mean, some of the best compliments I can get is when people are just like, yo, you're making me feel seen for once. Like, my profession's seen and like normalized and like understood. I think that's the biggest thing. And, salespeople are just the absolute worst most of the time. They're all going to be like, where's the channel sales, bro? Like, where's the on-site? Like, they're all going to nitpick all the things that they didn't see. And it's like, dude, I would have done all those things if we had budget and time and like all these things. I just hope it is at least, and again, people will be like, it's not enterprise sales, it's SMB sales, it's different. Like, fine, like the nuances that you understand the rest of the world doesn't give a flying fuck about. Like, sorry. What I want it to be is just like at least the most accurate portrayal of what tech sales is today. And I think it will be that. I even think Silicon Valley missed it in a huge way. They'd spent like 3 episodes max on it, and they just basically had the sales team like in the room kind of being there. There was it's the side of Silicon Valley, the story that nobody told. And it's the oldest, largest profession on earth. It's like far bigger than any amount of developers or VCs or founders. It's like, it's the real engine that kind of has made Silicon Valley go around for so many years. And so I'm just, stoked to be able to tell that story as best as we can with the resources and constraints that we had.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun. I'm beyond excited for it. I'm glad this exists in the world. I was telling Ross this when he shared the idea with me the first time. I was like, 100% yes. Like, not even a second hesitation. Because I think what you said is what really got me excited about it as well. Having built technology for salespeople now for, gosh, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years or so, it's such an important part of the ecosystem. And there's so many, there's probably millions, if not tens of millions of people around the world that are doing this job, yet their story was not told. And so I think I'm again, fingers crossed. I'm really hoping this thing takes off because I think there are still many more stories to tell around it. And yeah, let's see where it goes.
We didn't even touch the marketing team. We didn't even get marketing in this. Like
I
I'm
know
disappointed
for
we
that.
couldn't even get marketing in there. We couldn't afford
Yeah,
it.
the sales conference.
Yeah, exactly. The sales conferences, sales trainers. Like, God, there's so many things and ideas that we have, but we just, next season, I guess. So we're always like, push it to season 2. You're just, that was always the joke. We'll do it in season 2.
Let me ask, I guess we'll end with 2 questions here. How did you decide what to actually put in and what not to? And the reason I ask that is because the concept of focus is so important when you're building anything. I come at it from the perspective of building products and like, what feature do you put in, what do you not, like, what do you release? How do you do that in developing a series?
For me, it's always story. It's like when I'm going through and when we're working it out and writing the script and anything that's like, getting cut is just like, does this contribute to the story? Is this information we need to know to move forward? Or is it just a really funny joke? And then as far as sales stuff, it's like, there were maybe some things that were like too specific, or like we don't need to know this bit of information, still keeping like my general audience hat on, like what information do they need to know, what's funny. I mean, I will say like the sales world is incredibly rich with like a lot of humorous material, so there's a lot of stuff that we want to include but couldn't, and we will in the next season. But yeah, for me it was always just keeping it tight, keeping it funny, keeping it focused.
So let's end on one last question here for each of you, if you have one. But what's your favorite part, or what's your favorite scene in the show?
It has to do with Mickey, who's a new SDR that's just joined the character. We kind of join the company as viewers as she joins the company. And we have a flashback to her sales training. And, I've never gone through sales training, but I've done, I've heard about it and things. It's supposed to be very constructive. But this was with the manager Pfister giving a very blunt and realistic training exercise, where instead of having a nice prospect who's going along with everything you're saying, immediately blows up and is frustrated and starts cussing you out and telling you that you're calling them as illegal and they're going to prosecute you and all these things. So it's just a great scene as a standalone scene, even as like a flashback. I think it's great. And that was one of the first scenes I read. I think it's in maybe the second or third episode that I was like, wow, this is going to be great on screen. And then Stephen came along and made it even better.
I love this other scene that has dialogue about a popsicle stand that if you watch the show, you will appreciate that later on. But yeah, I'm really proud of the opening of the show and the opening shot, as well as the following scene, which is like mainly all the characters' intros. Because that was like the second day of shooting, and like I really just wanted it to be energetic and really introduce all these characters in a fun, fresh way. And I think we really nailed it. And for our day 2, like first thing we're shooting, like I could watch that, the first episode and just be like really proud of the work we did throughout. But I think it really grabs you and pulls you in and makes you want to invest time with these people.
I think those are both great scenes, and I probably would have picked them before this one, but I'm going to pick a third one, and that is inside of Casa Jeff's. We talked about like the diversity of shots, and it's basically a monologue. Basically, I give this monologue on why I got let go of my previous company, and we talk about, I explain like what President's Club is. We kind of see what happened and why I got fired, which is absolutely outrageous. But we use this like green screen technique, which looks really good, and like it just moves really well and kind of like superimposes different locations where I'm describing. Like this President's Club could be in like Fiji and Vegas, and it's like it's intentionally cheesy, but it works really well. So like I'm walking in place, like wearing a Hawaiian shirt, and like the background just changes from like Fiji to Vegas to Cincinnati, and I'm just like still wearing the same shit. But it works well as like telling a story, and I just think I like that scene not just because of like what I'm saying in it or even that I'm in it, but just that it's like a testament to what we were able to achieve with like the limited resources and like do it in a funny way that feels on brand and feels right. It didn't feel like we were cheaping out. It felt like a choice.
I can't wait, man. This needed to exist. It exists, and let's hope we keep it going, because like
Yeah.
you said, there's a lot of rich content that
Yeah.
comes out of sales.
That was the thing that struck me the most, just reading it. It was just like, this is such a rich world. It was so
Yeah.
funny. Like, it just felt like the world needs this show, and I think it totally does. And so it's been born. So let's keep it going. Let's make another season.
Beyond Quota.
Are you looking for ways to execute, manage, and measure your entire sales process? Scratchpad is your answer. The world's largest sales teams, including Autodesk, Algolia, Cisco, GoTo, Twilio, Segment, are already seeing better results. Learn more at scratchpad.com.